There's a provocative new book out that claims an ideological battle for India's future is being fought not so much on its soil, but in the halls of Western universities. So today we're going to unpack the central thesis of Snakes in the Ganga. So, just to be clear, our source here is the book Snakes in the Ganga, Breaking India 2.0. In this explainer, we're simply going to map out the book's core arguments. Now, we're not here to say whether these claims are true or not. Our job is just to help you clearly understand the thesis that the authors have put forward. Right from the get-go, this book sets a really high-stakes tone. I mean, a quote in the foreword frames its argument not as some simple academic debate, but as an urgent warning with what it calls civilizational implications. Okay, so what is this big warning all about? Well, the authors are building on one of their earlier works, and they're arguing that a totally new and different set of destabilizing forces are now at play. And they've given it a name, Breaking India Forces 2.0. At the heart of it, here's what the book is claiming. A very specific set of socio-political theories from the United States are being actively imported into India. And the authors argue, hey, this isn't just the natural spread of ideas. They see it as a deliberate transfer that is causing some major social disruption. So you're probably wondering, what exactly is this ideology they're talking about? Well, the book points its finger at one specific intellectual framework, critical race theory, which it also connects to that term you hear a lot these days, wokeism. And the authors don't just stop there. They actually trace the family tree of this ideology. They argue that CRT, or critical race theory, isn't some brand new invention. No, they see it more as an Americanization of much older European philosophies, specifically Marxism and French postmodernism. Okay, so how does the book itself define critical race theory? Well, they describe it as a framework built on the idea that society is fundamentally divided into two groups, oppressors and the oppressed. In this view, systemic racism isn't just about individual prejudice. It's something unconsciously baked right into the system, into all our institutions, laws, and social structures. Now, to really drive their point home, the authors set up this really sharp contrast between critical race theory and what they call classical liberalism. They present them as two completely competing worldviews on how to think about justice, rights, and society as a whole. And this is where they really break it down. On one side, you've got classical liberalism, which the book says is all about individual rights, equality of opportunity, and free speech. But on the other side, they define CRT as prioritizing group identity, demanding equity, which means equal outcomes, and allegedly using tools like cancel culture to enforce its worldview. Okay, and this right here, this brings us to the absolute core of the book's entire argument, how this Western theory of race is supposedly being adapted and rejiggered for the very unique social context of India. This is it. This is the central equation of the entire book's argument. The authors claim that activists and academics are literally taking the American racial binary of black and white and just mapping it directly onto India's caste system. So in this framework, caste is effectively reframed as race. And the book alleges this isn't happening by accident, that it's a deliberate four-step process. It starts, they say, by mapping identities, equating Dalits with Black Americans and Brahmins with white Americans. From there, a new critical caste theory is developed. Next, the American toolkit of legal challenges and activism gets imported. And the final step, according to the book, is the creation of social movements that mirror their American counterparts, like Dalit Lives Matter. And look, the authors aren't just talking in abstract terms. They name specific individuals and movements that they see as the main characters in this story. They critique their work as the driving force behind this Indianization of critical race theory, from creating the intellectual framework all the way to conducting workplace surveys in Silicon Valley. So, if this adaptation is really happening, where's it all being put together? Well, the book points to one specific institution as the academic and strategic epicenter for this whole project. You can see from the book's own structure right here how central Harvard University is to their argument. I mean, this diagram shows how the authors frame Harvard as the critical link, the bridge between developing the theory and then deploying it to influence a new generation of Indian elites. And according to the book, this goes way beyond just theory. The authors allege a whole range of activities are being coordinated at Harvard, from developing this critical caste theory and building databases to support it, to actually training activists to carry this ideology back into Indian society. All right, so that brings us to the final piece of the argument, the impact.
How do these ideas, allegedly developed abroad, actually infiltrate and start to affect Indian society on the ground?
The authors draw a really key distinction here between the old forces and the new ones. They argue that Breaking India 1.0 targeted rural populations, mainly through NGOs. In contrast, they claim this new 2.0 version targets urban elites through prestigious universities, all powered by the ideology of critical race theory. For them, it is a fundamental shift in strategy.
And what's the end game here? Well, ultimately, the authors argue this isn't just a political debate. They claim the goal is to dismantle what they define as the foundational pillars of Indian civilization. We're talking everything from its language and spiritual traditions to the family structure itself. And that brings us to the end. The provocative thesis of Sneaks in the Ganga leaves us with a really challenging question. And it's not just about India, but about the global flow of ideas today. What happens and who is responsible when theories born in one specific cultural context are exported and applied to a completely different one? It's a question worth thinking about.